Hello and welcome back to the RevOps Show, something that everybody always seems to want a lot of, dashboards and reports. They are great to have when there's a purpose behind them, but many people make mistakes and don't really see the why to have a dashboard or a report, which can lead to a lot of challenges. Jess and Doug are here today to walk through creating an effective report and dashboard. And Doug shares some key mistakes that you should avoid while making or even thinking about making them. It's a highly informative episode today, so let's sit back and get into it.
All right, Jess, you're looking happy today. Let's see if we can get through a whole podcast without destroying it.
I don't know. Are you going to break the soundboard out? Because that will turn that around pretty quickly.
We don't talk about Bruno.
There it is.
Oh my gosh, could that have been queued up any better than where it was queued up?
No, it's great. It's great.
Now here's the question: are we going to get a cease and desist?
Oh, because of us playing. We don't have the
for it.
you know,
I used to be a member of ASCAP.
I don't know what that is.
I forget what ASCAP stands for, but basically, so when I owned my DJ company, I decided to, follow the rules, because you got a sticker. Plus, I got to have a sticker that said member ASCAP.
We talked about this earlier this week. We know how much you love you some swag. So
and so it's basically so in paying them, it made it legal for me to play other, I mean, technically and I forget whether this is related to the writer or the performer. There's so much in there, and technically those artists had to be licensed with, had to, be licensed with ASCAP. So like if they weren't in the ASCAP program, then technically if you played it, then you were. So it's basically how, every time a song gets played on radio, they get paid something. That's where that money comes from.
Well,
so IP.
There it is. Are you excited about our topic today?
I'm looking forward to our topic. Yeah.
You are?
I finally got to choose a topic. So
you did.
Usually my opinions are ignored internally.
There's reasons for that, though. Every now and then, you'll have a blinding flash of genius.
It's like I was telling somebody, how I was getting paid to, I do these calls where I get paid to share my thoughts with, and I'm like, hell, my kids and the people who work for me, they're telling me to shut up all the time. So you're going to pay me to talk to you for an hour? Sure, got it.
It's a little aggressive. I don't think we tell you to shut up. I mean, not in those words.
Not in those words. So what are we talking about today, Jess?
We're going to talk about dashboards and reporting. More specifically, effective dashboards and reporting.
Oh, you totally messed up the topic. Wow, that's going to be harder for me to do. All right. I thought we were going to talk about ineffective dashboards and reporting. I thought I was going to get to talk about what everyone does wrong with dashboards and reporting.
Well, we can talk about
that.
Now
you're going to make me tell people how to do it right?
Yep. You had me for a second there. I was like, what?
Okay, you're going to make me work.
I am going to make you work. You're going to earn your keep today. So let's start with the question I have is, what does an effective dashboard and report accomplish? Because I think we got to talk about that first.
Well, that question puts dashboard and report on. That makes them kind of synonyms, doesn't it?
Okay, so let's break them out. What makes a dashboard effective? Or do you want to start with report?
This podcast helps us in our team recruiting efforts, because I think people maybe listen to this and go, "Oh my God, I would have to deal with what?"
Welcome to my world, everyone. Welcome to my world.
So where were we going?
So what makes an effective? Let's start with report. What makes an effective report?
So what's interesting when you ask that question is, as I was thinking, believe it or not, I do try to prepare for these podcasts. And so when I was looking at your questions and I thought about this, I'm going to bring up something that up to this point I thought I was being very HubSpot-y in that this was a designation because it was a HubSpot designation. But then, with some recent things that we've done and thinking about this, it's actually, I think we conflate the word report. And I think this is a Salesforce driven thing. We
know where you're
we
gonna go with
equate
this.
report, and a report could be a reporter, could be a view.
Yep. And it's known as a query in some other systems as well. So I don't think it's just HubSpot and Salesforce centric. I will say that. I see it.
Well, I'm saying it's Salesforce centric because you create a report for this, and to get a good view, you create a report. Now in HubSpot, what's interesting is, I don't know why I'm using the word interesting so much, but is if you want a single object, it's a view. But if you want a multi-object, you have to make it a report, but it's still really just a view, right? So am I looking to get a view of a cohort of like stuff, deals, contacts, companies, where I'm bringing information together because I'm looking to analyze. So I think what makes an effective dashboard an effective dashboard, and an effective report and an effective report, and an effective view and effective view is, do they make it easier for you to do what you need to do? Does your business, do you increase velocity? Are you able to align your vectors? Can you, right? So it is very much of what is the job to be done. And so mistake number one is, I think far too many dashboards, reports, and views are fill in the blank in search of a job to be done, as opposed to delivering on a job to be done.
Okay.
I mean, the number of times I ask somebody, what do you do with this?
Yeah.
Well, I review this to make sure that everything's been completed correctly.
Yep.
Okay, well, you don't need a report for that. It's a waste of time.
Okay, so what you're saying is that
You're going to let me get away with that? Just saying it's a waste of time and we're going to leave everybody.
Why is it a waste of time?
So what a good report and dashboard does is it gives you a direct line to the signal.
What does that mean?
It eliminates the noise.
What does that mean?
It means that there's no noise and there's only signal.
For those of us
If you go,
who are too young to remember signal versus noise, let's
well, hold on a second. Let's not say that signal and the noise isn't used regularly here. But I mean, if you go back to the old days of radio, the signal was what someone was saying, and the noise was the static or other radio band communication that came through. And so, the signal is what matters. The noise is everything else. Actually, great book that just came out by one of my favorite behavioral psychologists, behavioral economist, Daniel Kahneman. The book is called Noise. And it's all about this, that so much of what we do is overloaded by noise. That's why we do so many stupid things. So what a good report does is it gives you the signal. So if I have a report to make sure that things are filled out correctly, I'm filled with noise, because unless 98% of what's in there is incorrect, and by the way, if 98% of the data in a report was incorrect, or 98% of the data in a view was incorrect, you'd have a hard time identifying it because you'd be overwhelmed by incorrect data, right? So, I want to make sure that all the properties have been filled in. Okay, then I don't need to look at all the properties that have been filled in. What I can do is I can create an exception report.
Yep.
Or I could create an exception notification, right? Like why, so I'm looking to make sure that is not an action. How do you use this report? Well, I want to make sure. Well, I want to understand. Well, I want to show somebody what they're doing this year versus last year. Okay, why? What are you going to do with that information? How are you going to use it? Now, there, some reporting is to say everything's good.
How is that different than a report than saying that the report like to make sure data is input right? Or how is that different than looking at last year versus this year?
What are you looking at for last year versus this year?
So what are you looking at when you say everything's good?
Well, if I'm saying it, so here's how I look at things. I look at the world as in norm. So hypothesis, action, result, assess, learn, hypothesis, action. In the hypothesis, you need to have an expected result.
Mm-hmm.
So I expect that, I expect that we're going to be up 30% this year over last year.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that on a low end, I expect to be, so as long as we're at least 20% ahead.
Yep.
As long as we're between 20 and 40% at any given time, then that's in expectations. That's in norm. If we're below 20% or above 40%, then that's outlier.
Yep.
So if I'm looking at it, and in essence, what that report is designed to do is to confirm inaction, right?
Okay.
So, but if I don't have a hypothesis, hey, you have 17 opportunities. Jim has 17 opportunities today. What does that mean? He has 17 opportunities in his pipeline today.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? I don't know. Okay. Does it mean anything more if he had 15 last month and he has 17 this month? Does it mean more?
I don't know.
What do you need to know?
I need to know what our goal is for the opportunity.
What should he have in his pipeline?
Yeah. What should he have? Yeah.
Right. So if Jim should have 20 and he's at 17 right now, he's at an 85% index. He's at 85% where he should be.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if he had 15 last month, okay, he went from here to here. But what if Jim should have 10?
Well, 17 might not be good if Jim should have 10, because that's almost double what he should have. So how's he going to be able to handle 17?
Right. See, so that element of, without a hypothesis, data is just noise.
So is that the problem, that people don't start with a hypothesis in mind?
That's one of the problems.
Is there a difference between what we're trying to accomplish with a specific report versus a specific dashboard? Like, is your goal for a dashboard different than your goal for a report?
Yeah, the confusing thing here is that, especially in the world of HubSpot, a dashboard is comprised of quote unquote reports.
Right.
So a dashboard, where does the term dashboard come from? It's a plane analogy, right? It's flying the plane. The pilot has a dashboard.
Yeah.
How many dials does the pilot have on their dashboard?
I have no idea, but it's a lot.
It's a lot. Right? Now, why does the pilot have a lot of dials on its dashboard, on their dashboard?
Make sure the plane's doing what you need the plane to be doing.
Nope.
I don't know.
The reason they have a lot of dials on their dashboard is because technology didn't exist. The technology didn't exist.
Oh.
Right. Now, if you look at their dashboard, you'll see that those dials have different sizes. And I forget the exact details, but it's somewhere between 3 and 5 of the dials. So there might be 50 dials on the dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
At any given time, the 3 to 5 are what they're paying attention to. When one of those dials shows out of norm, then they have to dig deeper. So if the pilot's dashboard were invented today, their dashboard would only have a few dials on it. And when it went out of norm, it would then dig to the specific dials. But because everything had to be laid out, right? I couldn't dig into, we couldn't dig into the report, so most of those dials are never looked at in a flight, right? Then there are also some dials. So like the dashboard it's a flash report. It's a quick view at the interrelatedness of something, right? And here again, it should be either general, where are we on course, off course? What's the strength, the weakness? What's the trend? Right? You're looking for very broad brush strokes in a dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
Then as you go deeper into that dashboard or deeper into reports, you now get to specialized functions. So now I'm landing. Well, now the altimeter really matters. When I'm cruising, the altimeter doesn't really matter that much. Am I at 33,000 feet? Am I at 37,000 feet?
Right.
It doesn't really matter, right? When I'm at 100 feet, it really matters.
Yep.
Right. And so here again, what's the job to be done? So as you move from dashboards to reports, you're beginning to dial in that, what's the behavior that you're supporting here? What's happening? What's going on?
Sure. All right. So
right, you have to have clear business process.
I knew we were going to hit on that at some point during this conversation. So that kind of goes with I think that might be the answer to what I'm about to ask. But how do you put together a strategy for an effective dashboard? Let's start there.
You have activities.
Mm-hmm.
I call them efforts. You have outcomes. Those are controllable elements, not wholly controllable, but let's say highly influenceable. And then you have results. So you have efforts, outcomes, results. The problem with efforts / activities is all they do is measure activity. So it doesn't, you know, I can have I can make 1,000 calls today.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean I've gotten any closer. That's why, one of our key metrics is meaningful conversations.
Right.
Now, meaningful conversations is going to be heavily influenced by how many calls you make, right? And by the quality of the calls, et cetera. And a meaningful conversation has a causal relationship, not 100% causal, but it has a causal relationship to the outcome that we're looking for, which is an advanced sales opportunity. So what are the results that you want? The problem with results, closed business, is A, it's a rear view mirror.
Mm-hmm.
B, you don't have control over it, or you don't have as much control over it as you should. So again,
Right.
For example, I can do everything right. If the economy were to go into the tank, my sales are going to go down.
Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't really give me, like, it's not particularly actionable.
Mm-hmm.
What is actionable is that causal element, right? And so there's an element that you need to know both, right? I'm not saying lagging indicators don't matter at all. They do, right? And there's a place for that. And so I want to be able to get a quick at a glance. Where are we? So, like, if you look at our sales overview dashboard, it's got our report for, revenue won by type of solution. We also track by number of, so I don't get lost in just revenue. I want to, because I would say to a large degree, I have far more control over the number of opportunities that I get, than how big that opportunity is, right? So if I'm if my pipelines jump to $1 million because I just got a $900,000 opportunity, and I just look at $1 million, that's hiding something, right? So I'm looking at both because I want to see a balance there, right? I'm looking at how many new opportunities in our lead management pipeline. So that's our sales development pipeline. That's basically first conversations,
mm-hmm.
or first meaningful engagements with what we think is a fit. Right now, I know a lot of those are going to be, they're not going to turn out, right? But I want to see that, and by the way, I want to see that growing at a rate faster than I'm seeing my closed business grow, or I'm going to be surviving only on better conversion, right? And so I've got like 5 metrics on there that are, trailing indicators on one hand. Although I would say lead management is a leading indicator, right?
Mm-hmm.
New sales ops created as a leading indicator.
Yep.
So I'm creating some of that constraint that gives me a good feel of where I am. Now, over the weekend, by the way, I just created a new dashboard on this. And last year when we started seeing, not only did we beat did 2021, was it performing ahead of 2020, which we fully expect would be the case, but it started lapping 2020.
Yeah.
Right? Well, you remember we went into, okay, hold on, this is going to begin to run away. We better get in front of it, right?
Yep.
So we saw that. And now what I began to notice is that there's a little bit of the plot that I'm losing in terms of only being able to see this year versus last year.
Yeah.
So I don't think I've even shown you this yet, Jess.
No, you haven't.
I created those key metrics and I now have a trend. I have an historical trend that typically goes back to 2019 and lets me look at it on a month by month basis as opposed to a cumulative year over year. So I can take a look at, because I felt like January was kind of slow.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm laughing because
I know you guys didn't feel like January was kind of slow.
Was so crazy, but no, actually, I'm starting to feel. I think we feel it a little later than you, but I'm starting to feel a little bit of the slowdown.
Well, and so I would have been, and sure enough, we closed about half of our average last year, half of our monthly average in January. But we also hit a high water mark on new lead management opportunities.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So I'm like, okay, now I have to see how they pan out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also saw that our deal size cohort were, we've got a couple that are in our much higher band, but like what's missing, we're not getting a lot of middle band.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm able to, so again, those are things that I'm able to see that enable me to look and go, okay, does this need to dig in? Now I'll tell you 9 times out of 10, probably more than that, probably 9.9 times out of 10. When I look at that dashboard, my takeaway is keep going.
Yeah.
Right. Don't do anything. Those are my, that's an example of my in-norm dashboard.
Yep.
Right. Now, if I start seeing something that begins to go out, that's where my reports come in. So again, how do you go about designing that? You got to be clear on, what are the key inflection points of your process? What leads to the outcomes? And look, are we 100% on point to what leads to the outcomes? No. Are we better than we were 3 years ago? We're a lot better than we were 3 years ago.
Well, and that goes back to the hypothesis piece, right? Like a lot of that, you have a hypothesis of what's driving those outcomes. You test that hypothesis, iterate, continue.
Yep.
So, yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting because I think it's one of the hardest things for us to articulate, and it's certainly the hardest thing for clients to get their heads wrapped around. But why is it so hard to put an effective dashboard together? I mean, so one thing is we hit on the hypothesis piece. I think people aren't paying attention enough to outcomes and results, but I think they end up resulting more than paying attention to the actual results. But what are some of the other challenges that you see when trying to put an effective dashboard together?
Well, I mean, so there's the challenge of putting an effective dashboard together, and putting effective reporting together, and then there's the challenge of actually utilizing it, which leads to and the challenge of utilizing it is a lot to do with why the mistake that I'm going to talk about in putting them together is such a big mistake, and that is the most common mistake I see is too many dashboards, too many reports, far too many dashboards, far too many reports. Dashboards and reports that are so overlapping, it makes me sick. I mean, we're working with somebody right now where we're going through their 300 reports that they want recreated.
Yeah, it's funny. The Brad who's building them actually had the same thought that you did. Like, wow, there's a lot of overlap. I can't remember the word he used, but there's a lot of overlap here.
But if you're tracking 300 reports, you're not tracking anything.
Everything important is important. Nothing, as a wise woman once said.
Yeah, but it's even beyond that. By the way, I'm going to tell you in my experience, having too many reports is worse than having too few.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that because you don't even know what to pay attention to because there's so much. Is that like you can't see the forest for the trees?
There's some of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's to the number, So when you if I ask you, what do you think of this? What are you going to do?
I'm going to look at it and tell you what I think of it. No, I need to know, like, I would need more context.
You're going to look at it and you're going to come up with something that you think of it.
Yeah.
How often do you tell somebody what they think of it? That your real honest answer, the honest answer is, I don't think anything.
Yeah.
Right. That's the reality. I don't think anything.
Yeah.
It's why focus groups are so bad. I come up with my new ad and I show it to you. What do you think of this? Well, guess what? That ad, when it shows up, no one's going to be looking to think of it. So if I have to ask you what you think of it, right? So when I put a stimulus in front of you, I'm creating an environment where you want to respond.
Yep.
Right. So if I put data in front of you, you're going to think, what do I need to do?
Yeah. It's why with
something.
Yeah.
Because by the way, if I give you this report and you look at it and you go, okay, here.
Yeah.
How do I feel? What do you mean? Okay. Right. If I put data in front of somebody, they're going to want to do something.
I'm laughing because like we run into this on the content side all the time. It's why like everybody wants to edit a blog to death.
Right. And when I was a financial advisor, I I realized the greatest advantage, the greatest benefit of all the wonderful things that I did, the biggest benefit that I brought to my clients was I made them less likely to do something.
Yeah.
And it is unquestionable that for an investor, the more activity you have, the lower your performance. But by the way, when I would talk to somebody about an investment, like somebody representing an investment house saying, here's this investment, I would always ask them, okay, how's it work?
Yeah.
Why is it good? In what conditions does it perform well? And what conditions will it perform poorly?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, if they could, and the way I would say is, no, so tell me, how do I get hurt with this investment?
Yeah.
And if someone said, oh, no, that's the great thing about this investment. You're never going to get hurt. I was done. I stopped listening to them. Right. But when they said, well, in this type of market condition, when this is happening, this investment is going to underperform X, Y, or Z. So sure enough, we'd get into that environment.
And it would underperform.
It would underperform. And everyone else would be, they'd be going crazy. And I'd be like, no, we expected it to underperform here.
Yeah.
My favorite, my favorite investment story of all time, the Munder Net Fund. So this was a highly concentrated mutual fund that invested only in internet stocks. And this was 1997, 1998, 1999, 2000. And it was up like 50%, 75%, 125%. And then in the year 2000, it was down 80%. When do you think most people put most of their money into the Munder Net Fund?
In 99?
In the beginning of 2000.
Okay.
The year after, it was up 120%. And it won all these awards and everyone wrote about it.
Yep.
It was like 70, 80% of the money came into the fund after it hit its peak.
And then everybody sold.
So everyone lost 80%.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
By the way, if you looked at its 5-year average, was still really good.
Yeah.
But, right? Because, hey, when do we come in? Right?
Right.
And it's why people buy high and sell low.
Yep.
Right? By the way, if you're an investor today, if you're net going in and the market's down, you should celebrate. But what is everybody that's sitting at their desk working and the word comes out, the market was down X, Y, or Z today. Oh my God. No, I want it to go down. You know why I want it to go down? Because I get more.
Yeah.
Right? Buy low, sell high. Well, we forget that low means there's a lot of craziness going on. That's why something so simple is so hard to do, right? So again, I saw it in baseball. When I used to do baseball, we kept track of everything.
Yeah.
Right. And what you started seeing was everyone wanted to fiddle, everybody wanted to change. And that's why you got to be really, really careful. Hey, our blog's been up for 6 months. What's the data look like? Hey, this blog post has 17 views. This one only had 5. We need to do more of the 17.
Yeah.
Huh? Right. But that's what's going to happen. And so, we forget too much data in front of somebody is worse than not enough.
That's a good point. I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but I want to ask you about this overlap piece, like where you'll have reports that overlap. Because we will do that sometimes where we'll put the same report on a dashboard because we might want to see that report with another report on a particular dashboard, and maybe that dashboard's being utilized by a different cohort than dashboard B. So how do you do that without creating too much redundancy?
That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm not suggesting that the problem is that the same report. I'm suggesting that you have 7 different reports that are 95% the same.
Okay.
Or you create 7 different reports that you could get what you want by filtering, but you create them 7 different times. Okay. And it's why people hate spreadsheets, right? Because spreadsheets have to be updated, and you in essence have version control. So what happens is if I think I'm looking at the same thing that you're looking at, but I'm not looking at the same thing that you're looking at, chaos ensues.
Yes, I've seen that many times. So I want to talk about how do you start if you're putting a new system in place, a new process in place, where do you start with getting an effective dashboard?
What are you trying to do? Maybe you don't need a dashboard.
Well, that would be crazy to like 90% of our clients, because everybody feels like they need a dashboard at launch.
Well, I think they use dashboard and report interchangeably. Maybe
they do. They do.
And look, there's an element where, I certainly have a dashboard that's got a group of reports on it because I want to get easier access to the report, and having to go to find the report
Sure.
every single time is a pain in the butt. But then that dashboard isn't a dashboard. It's my, it's 5 different reports.
It's your report receptacle.
Yeah. And in on the sales overview dashboard, I actually added a report for deals set to close this month, just because I wanted it there for convenience. Because while I was checking that and as we were getting, it technically doesn't belong on that dashboard, but it's really not a part of the dashboard, but it's on the dashboard for convenience. That, again, that's fine.
I think that's an interesting point, though, that doesn't, like, that's something I don't know that we've ever talked about before, but sometimes that gets confused with, hey, I need these things here for convenience versus, hey, I need this here because I'm looking for a particular signal. And it gets confused, like, what the goal of that dashboard is. Am I using it to kind of hold reports that I want to look at and have easy access to? Am I using this to tell a story, basically, or get a specific key frame of mind about where we're at with things with a particular dashboard? I think that gets conflated with clients sometimes.
Sure. I'm sure it does. But I mean, I would start off and say, well, what are you doing? What do you need a report for? What question are you trying to answer? What hypothesis are you testing? And by the way, one of the biggest dangers about data, I find data gives very unreliable answers, and it can provoke but it provokes very good questions. And so if you're using data and reporting to answer, it works some, but that's where we get into trouble. But there again, what is it that, what's the question that you're trying to answer? And by the way, why are you asking that question? I've had writers tell me how the blog post did. And I'm like, I thought it did great. Well, how many visitors did it have? I'm like, why do you want to know? Because I want to know how it's doing.
Yeah.
I think it's doing great. But how many visitors does it have? Guess what? I don't want you to know how many visitors it has. Well, why don't you want me to know how many visitors it has? Well, because I don't want you to write, or I don't want this type, I don't want it to be written for visitors. Like, that's not what I'm, right? So again, what am I trying to do here? But what's the question that you have? What's the hypothesis that you're testing? What's the action that you're looking to be able to take?
I think that's good too, because we've had that conversation internally, and that was a big sea change for the team. Like, to think about looking at data, what questions does it prompt versus what questions does it answer? We had talked about that a lot a few years ago when we were looking at dashboards, and everybody was trying to, first of all, they didn't even have the question in their mind, I don't think, but second of all, they were trying to like figure out answers from the data versus glean the questions. And I think that's a struggle.
Now, a dashboard as a dashboard, I look at a dashboard as a flash report. The ability to see multiple checks in a concentrated area to get a sense for health. And health is in norm, out of norm.
Gotcha. So why do you think there's such a focus on dashboards and reporting? And I'm probably a little tainted on this because we're heavy in implementations with several clients, and there's always this want for a dashboard now. We need it at launch. Why is there such a focus on that?
So here's my question.
Mm-hmm.
Think about all the reports that we've created and all the dashboards that we've created.
Yeah.
What percentage do you think are accessed, let alone actually used, more than once a month?
I think the very seldomly.
I would say less than 20%.
Yeah. I think we have a couple of clients who have been but they had some good process in place and were clear on what they want, and they probably use them, but those are the exception, not the rule.
Hold on. There are reports that are accessed every week, every day. I'm asking what percentage of all the reports.
Of all of the reports. Oh, yeah, that would be low.
Even for the good ones.
Yeah, that would be low. I'd say 20% is probably good.
Right.
Whack.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're creating all these reports that you're not going to use. Why are we doing that? Right? Why are we intended to? Well, we seek certainty.
Yeah.
Data is like a lamppost for a drunk. It's used more for support than for illumination. Someone told us that modern sales and marketing makes everything measurable. Someone else said, if you don't measure it, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
But they didn't say because you measure, it matters. And by the way, to actually get the signal, it's really freaking hard. And it's easier to create a whole bunch of different things. And by the way, if I create enough reports, I'm eventually going to be able to find a report that at any given time tells me what I want to know. I'm sorry, tells me what I want to hear.
Oh, okay.
No. See, this report, this says that this says that we're okay here. To my boss. And then 7 months later, it's a totally different. No. That's not the report to look at. The one that we looked at 7 months ago, it's this other report, right?
Yeah.
And so it's, there's a tendency, if we don't know what to look for, we create something, and then it's not right. So we create something else. So we create something else. So we create something else. Because candidly, it's a lot easier than actually figuring out what you need. I looked at our reports and dashboards the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a thought, we should probably delete 90% of these.
We probably should.
And then I thought, oh my God, no, I can't throw those away.
It was so CEO-like of you to be that way.
But look, how many shirts do I wear in a year? I don't know. I don't mean how many days do I wear a shirt.
I was going to say.
What's the unique count of shirts that I wear in a year?
I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to say somewhere between the account of a typical person, probably somewhere between 20 and 40, depending on who you are.
And how many shirts do you think the typical person has?
Oh, way more than that.
Somewhere between 200 and 500.
Yeah.
Why? Why is Marie Kondo cleaning your closet? You haven't worn it, like she's earth-shattering. You haven't worn this shirt in 7 years.
I can't joy.
But I might want to.
Yeah. Just in case in that instance.
You know what I think is actually underrated? Ooh, this is something we should do. We should actually implement a report cleanup process. I think what's underrated is the process for creating one-off reports. Because sometimes I'm looking for something, but just because I look for, like, all of a sudden, you know what? It's too easy. The reason we have so many reports is because it's too damn easy to make one.
Yeah, yes, I agree. We've run into this with some clients where we've actually rolled back access on reports because it was too easy for everybody to make them, and it was wreaking havoc. I agree. We should do an audit of our reports though. So I think my big takeaway is we've all got to ask what question are you trying to answer? Like, that's where you got to start with. And the business, we only hit on it once. I'm shocked that we didn't talk about it more. Map out your business process. What's your business process? And then what question are you trying to answer? I think that's powerful when talking about reporting and dashboards, and we don't talk about it enough. Yep.
You know another reason why we have so many reports and dashboards?
Why?
You can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit.
Wow.
I'm serious. Because you can think about multiple clients, multiple implementations we've had recently.
Mm-hmm.
What are your key metrics? Have you ever noticed they have a hard time telling us what their KPIs are, key performance indicators?
But they can give us the list.
They have no problem telling us they want to build 100 reports.
Yeah. 100%. But I think that what question are you trying to answer? Like, that's hard. That requires me to think. That requires me to really dig in. It's much easier to say, no, I want to report on how many calls a rep has made. Why do I want that? Because I want it. Because I want to be able to tell my CEO that they're doing stuff.
Reports are used, again, reporting is like a lamppost for a drunk. Used more for support than for illumination, right?
Yep.
I also think there's probably a tendency that we report to show good news.
Oh yeah.
We should probably seek to create more reports to show signs of bad news. Because one of the things that I always ask too, and I know that we're done, but what good reporting does is it leads to intervention.
Well, so you tell this story frequently. So I can't remember if we talked about this in the podcast, but I was a client before I worked here, and I remember the first 90-day review that we did where we had a report, and you're like, Jess, I have great news. nothing's doing anything. We're not making traction. It's like, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I have to go.
I believe what I said is I have very good news. We have not gotten a single download.
There it is.
On any of the things we offer.
There it is. And I'm thinking, holy shit, I have to go report up to my CEO that this isn't working. And you're like, no, it's great news, because we can use this and we can start changing things. We can start improving, and we've got real data. And no one looks at it that way. Like no one's excited by the bad data. We
now know that nobody is interested in what you thought they were interested in. And not you, but because you weren't the one who. But the point I'm getting at is what I want. It was funny. I was going over in analytics, and they were showing me all the data points that they can give you. And I'm like, okay, but what do I do with that? Mm-hmm. And they couldn't answer the question. I'm like, okay, well, yeah. Like, why do I care how many meetings it takes if I can't change it, right? And so what's the behavioral intervention? Far too much data that we get falls into the category of it may be true, but it's not going to do you any good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. 100%. Like I talk to people, I talk to agency owners all the time. We need to track hours. Why do you need to track hours? Well, that way I know if we're profitable or not. Like, how do you not know if you're profitable or not? You've got 22 people in your company. How do you have more money at the end of the month than you had when it started?
Yeah.
If the answer is no, then you're not profitable. Well, I need to know which client is profitable and which client isn't. Really? Do you not know which of your clients are not profitable? Like, I could tell you right now which of our clients are not profitable and which of our clients are profitable. Right. And by the way, if I take a look at the clients that aren't profitable in the moment that they're there, there's nothing I could do about it. Right. Because it's something went on. And if you want to know why, there's a rationale for why we do what we do. It's working out pretty well for us. But again, it comes down to, if I'm not going to do anything material with it, then why am I going to track it? It's just going to create more noise. What I want to do is identify what are the changeable elements. And oh, by the way, if you look at your data and it tells you that this is out of whack, and you went out of process, and that if you had been in process, you wouldn't be out of whack, then I don't need you to tell me that I'm out of whack, because I already know that I'm out of process.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where, like, the biggest challenge for reporting, and the way people should look at reporting and dashboards, is it should be a filter. It should filter the noise to give you a more powerful signal. And that means that less is more. Because, by the way, if you're paying attention and it turns out to fewer things, and it turns out you're paying attention to the wrong things, you're going to realize that pretty quickly and adjust. But if I'm paying attention to 100 things and some of them are right, well, then I end up having to pay attention to more things and more things and more things. Because, by the way, and this will be the last thing I say, what's the right signal today doesn't mean it's the right signal 6 months from now, right? If your reporting and dashboard isn't evolving, then you're not on point. And by the way, if that means that all you're doing, again, it kind of goes to force friction that we've talked about before. If all we're doing is adding more reports to adjust to that, then our noise factor is growing at a faster rate than our signal factor is.
Yeah, that was actually a point I wanted to hit on. I'm glad you brought it up, that I didn't get to, was iteration, and how often should we be looking at them, and should we be continually updating them? And I think you're right. The inclination is, I'm going to create a new dashboard versus looking at what do we have and how do we need to modify that for what we need to look at today. Yep.
Arnie, what's your parting thought, Jess?
Like I said, what question are you trying to answer? That's what you got to start with, and make sure that you have a hypothesis.
There you go. Hypotheses matter.
Yes, they do.
We don't talk about Bruno.
Bye, everybody.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the RevOps Show. I'm starting to see a trend here with a lot of RevOps items. The first being, you have to ask yourself what it is you're trying or wanting to do. And secondly, you need to map your business process. Those are two big trends that I'm starting to see with everything RevOps related as we get further into these episodes. Anyway, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to go subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, leave us a review, and share the episode. If you have any questions you would like to ask Doug or Jess about dashboards, reporting, or anything RevOps related, email me at hannah@imaginellc.com or hit us up on Twitter at demandcreator. Until next time, remember, can't solve your upstream problems downstream.